is going on, Rick? What does it look like?
What do a hive mind X, a genetically engineered love potion gone wrong, an intergalactic marriage counseling session, and a wedding betrayal have in common? They're all prime examples of how not to do relationships. Brought to you by Rick Sanchez and his chaotic entourage. If you've ever wondered why Rick and Morty feels like a crash course in dysfunction, buckle up. This multiverse isn't just about intergalactic adventures. It's also a masterclass in toxic dynamics. Toxic relationships are messy, painful, and sometimes hilarious, at least when you're not the one living through them. Rick and Morty takes that chaos and dials it up to 100, throwing its characters into absurd sci-fi scenarios that amplify their dysfunction. Rick and Unity's volatile dynamic in autoerotic assimilation is a tragicomic look at codependency. Morty's obsession with Jessica in Rick Potion number 9 spirals into a Cronenberg apocalypse. Beth and Jerry's marital dysfunction in Big Trouble in Little Sanchez literally manifests as monsters. And then there's the wedding squanchers, where loyalty, betrayal, and friendship collide in one of the series' most devastating episodes. But what makes these stories so fascinating isn't just the sci-fi absurdity, it's the way they mirror real life. We've all seen relationships that bring out the worst in people, whether it's a friend who keeps going back to their ex or a couple who argue like their lives depend on it. Watching Rick and Morty, you can't help but see yourself, or someone you know, in these characters, and that's what makes it brilliant. In this video, we're diving deep into 4 episodes that capture the essence of toxic relationships. Along the way, we'll unpack the messy, chaotic, and heartbreakingly human truths behind these stories. So grab your portal gun and some emotional armor, because this is going to get toxic. You know that ex you just can't quit? The one who's bad for you, but you keep going back because the highs are just that good? Well, Rick Sanchez's ex is a hive mind named Unity, and their relationship isn't just toxic, it's downright apocalyptic. Welcome to autoerotic assimilation, where love and chaos collide in a way only Rick and Morty could deliver. When I first watched this episode, I couldn't help but think, why is this so relatable? Not that I've ever dated a hive mind, thankfully, but because at its core, this episode is about a dynamic many of us have experienced. 2 people, or in this case, a person and a hive mind, bringing out the absolute worst in each other. The reunion. The way Rick and Unity reconnect is almost charming, in a wildly dysfunctional way. Unity uses its hive mind ability to inhabit multiple bodies, flirting with Rick in a way that's both hilarious and unsettling. It's like running into your ex at a party, except they've taken over everyone in the room, and they're all flirting with you. Watching this scene, I couldn't help but think about how intoxicating validation can be, especially from someone you've shared history with. Rick thrives on the attention Unity gives him, and Unity, despite its power, seems to fall right back into old patterns. It's like that friend we all have who says, this time it'll be different, even though we know it won't. The spiral into chaos. The turning point comes when Rick, true to form, pushes Unity to indulge its worst impulses. Their nostalgic reunion quickly devolves into hedonistic chaos. Unity abandons its utopian society to join Rick in a party that spirals out of control, culminating in an orgy that tears the planet apart, literally. This scene hit me harder than I expected. It's funny on the surface, because, come on, only Rick and Morty could make an orgy with a hive mind funny, but it's also deeply sad. Watching Unity lose control of itself to please Rick is a harsh reminder of how easy it is to lose yourself in a toxic relationship. It's the classic I can fix them trap, except here, the fixer is a literal hive mind and the chaos is planetary. The goodbye. The emotional core of the episode lies in Unity's decision to leave Rick. Its heartfelt letter, delivered through multiple hosts, is a gut punch. Unity acknowledges that being with Rick is unsustainable, no matter how much it cares for him. Rick's reaction is uncharacteristically vulnerable. Left alone in the remnants of Unity's society, he silently processes the loss. The scene where Rick nearly takes his own life is one of the most haunting moments in the series, a stark reminder of the pain beneath his chaotic exterior. This part of the episode always leaves me floored. It's one of the rare moments where Rick's bravado cracks, and we see the depth of his loneliness. Have you ever had a moment where you knew you were your own worst enemy? That's Rick in this scene, and it's devastating. Autoerotic assimilation isn't just about a toxic relationship. It's about the ways we sabotage ourselves and the people we care about. Rick and Unity's dynamic is a cautionary tale about codependency and self-destruction, wrapped in the absurdity of a sci-fi comedy. The episode also explores the dangers of power dynamics. Unity's ability to control others gives it immense power, but it also makes it vulnerable to Rick's influence. Their relationship is a perfect storm of dysfunction, and the fallout is a poignant reminder of what happens when 2 forces collide without boundaries.
Never!
Rick Potion number 9. Unrequited love can be rough, but turning your entire high school, and eventually the world, into grotesque Cronenberg monsters just to get your crush's attention? That's a level of chaotic we can only expect from Rick and Morty. Welcome to Rick Potion number 9, an episode that takes Morty's teenage infatuation with Jessica and blows it up into a sci-fi disaster of epic proportions. When I first saw this episode, I had to pause and ask myself, have I ever been this desperate for someone's attention? Thankfully, I've never turned a love potion into an apocalypse, but the way Morty blindly charges ahead with his plan to win Jessica's affection felt uncomfortably relatable. It's a cringe-worthy but deeply human reminder of how far we'll go to chase a fantasy, even when the reality is screaming, "Stop!" The love potion debacle. It all starts with Morty's innocent or naive request.
Could you make some sort of chemical thing happen inside of Jessica's mind? So where she falls in love with me and...
Right there, you already know this isn't going to end well. But Rick, being Rick, agrees without hesitation, whipping up a concoction that's more dangerous than anyone anticipates. The initial scenes where Jessica becomes infatuated with Morty are both hilarious and unsettling. It's like watching a rom-com spiral out of control. Jessica's over-the-top obsession is funny until it spreads to the rest of the school, and then the whole town. Suddenly, Morty isn't just dealing with one admirer, he's running from a mob of love-struck lunatics. This part really got me thinking about how we sometimes underestimate the ripple effects of our actions. Morty's goal was simple: get Jessica to like him, but his lack of foresight leads to chaos on a massive scale. It's a painfully relatable lesson in how a little desperation can cause a lot of destruction. The Cronenberg mutation. Just when you think things can't get worse, they do. Rick's solution to the love potion problem is to add mantis DNA, which backfires spectacularly, turning everyone into grotesque Cronenberg monsters. The visual escalation here is absurd yet fascinating, a hallmark of Rick and Morty's dark humor. Watching Morty grapple with the consequences of his actions is both tragic and comedic. He's clearly out of his depth, but instead of owning up to his mistakes, he relies on Rick to clean up the mess. And Rick, he's more amused than alarmed, treating the entire ordeal like a minor inconvenience. What struck me most about this scene was the symbolism of the mutations. It's not just about the physical horror, it's about how toxic relationships and unchecked obsession can spiral into something unrecognizable. The Cronenberg monsters are a literal representation of what happens when we lose control of ourselves and our intentions. The escape plan. The episode's most shocking moment comes when Rick and Morty abandon their reality entirely. They leave behind their Cronenberg-infested world and their family, and start over in an alternate reality where their counterparts have just died. This part of the episode hit me like a ton of bricks. Imagine being so overwhelmed by your mistakes that you decide to leave everything behind. Watching Morty bury his own body while trying to adjust to this new reality was haunting. It's a brutal reminder that sometimes running away from your problems only creates new ones. Morty's silent acceptance of his new circumstances speaks volumes. It's a rare moment of maturity for him, but it also highlights the emotional cost of his decisions. For Rick, it's just another day in the multiverse, a reminder of his detachment from consequence. Rick Potion number 9 is a masterclass in how Rick and Morty turns personal flaws into universal lessons. Morty's obsession with Jessica and Rick's recklessness are exaggerated for comedic effect, but they also serve as biting critiques of entitlement, selfishness, and the dangers of taking shortcuts in relationships. The episode also raises questions about accountability. Morty's desperation sets the disaster in motion, but Rick's willingness to indulge him without considering the consequences exacerbates the situation. Together, they create a perfect storm of chaos that leaves them, and the audience, wondering if the cost of their actions was worth it. The Wedding Squanchers. Weddings are supposed to be celebrations of love and unity, but in Rick and Morty, even a joyful occasion can spiral into chaos and betrayal. Welcome to The Wedding Squanchers, an episode that starts with intergalactic vows and ends with one of the most devastating betrayals in the series. If you've ever felt the sting of being let down by someone you trusted, this episode hits hard. Rick's relationship with Bird Person is one of the few genuine connections he has in the series, which makes the events of this episode all the more gut-wrenching. Watching their friendship unravel amidst an intergalactic ambush reminds us that even the strongest bonds can break under the weight of secrets and mistrust. The wedding invitation. It all begins with an invitation. Bird Person and Tammy are tying the knot, and Rick, despite his cynicism about relationships, decides to attend. There's something strangely touching about this decision. For a man who prides himself on detachment, showing up for a wedding, even begrudgingly, feels like a rare moment of vulnerability. As the family prepares to leave, we see Rick grappling with his discomfort. Weddings symbolize commitment, trust, and optimism, values that Rick often mocks but secretly craves. For a brief moment, you can almost believe he's hopeful for his friend. Have you ever gone to a wedding feeling a mix of hope and dread? Maybe it's because you don't trust the couple will make it, or because the idea of long-term commitment feels foreign to you. That's Rick in this moment, and it's painfully relatable. The betrayal. The wedding begins as expected, a celebration filled with laughter, dancing, and squanching. But things take a dark turn when Rick discovers the truth about Tammy. She's an undercover agent for the Galactic Federation. This moment hits like a punch to the gut. Bird Person is one of the few characters who genuinely cares about Rick, and seeing Rick wrestle with whether to expose Tammy is heartbreaking. On one hand, he wants to protect his friend. On the other, he knows the fallout will be devastating. Rick's decision to reveal the truth is both heroic and tragic. He saves Bird Person from a deeper betrayal, but in doing so, he destroys the happiest day of his friend's life. Tammy's betrayal is swift and brutal, culminating in Bird Person's apparent death during the ambush. Have you ever been in a situation where doing the right thing meant hurting someone you care about? Watching this unfold, I couldn't help but think about how loyalty and honesty can sometimes clash in the most painful ways. The escape. As the Galactic Federation closes in, Rick and the family barely escape. The once joyful wedding transforms into a chaotic battlefield, leaving the audience, and Rick, reeling. This part of the episode is a perfect metaphor for how quickly trust can be shattered. One moment, everything feels perfect. The next, it's falling apart, and there's no going back. For Rick, the escape isn't just physical, it's emotional. He's running from the guilt of what's happened and the pain of losing one of his only true friends. The final moments, where Rick silently processes the events of the day, are haunting. His usual bravado is gone, replaced by a rare vulnerability. It's a reminder that even someone as guarded as Rick can't completely shut out the pain of betrayal. Big Trouble in Little Sanchez. Marriage is hard enough without the added complication of your issues turning into literal monsters. But in the world of Rick and Morty, therapy is never simple or safe. Welcome to Big Trouble in Little Sanchez, an episode that dives headfirst into Beth and Jerry's marital dysfunction, complete with intergalactic marriage counseling, emotional chaos, and a parallel storyline featuring Rick's tiny Rick persona that adds another layer of introspection to the mix. When I first watched this episode, I couldn't help but laugh at how hilariously on the nose it was. Beth and Jerry's problems are painfully relatable, even if your marriage hasn't involved holographic representations of your deepest insecurities. It's an absurdly funny yet surprisingly insightful take on how toxic relationships can spiral when communication breaks down. The manifestations. What if your partner's view of you came to life? Would it be flattering or horrifying? For Beth and Jerry, it's the latter. At the Intergalactic Counseling Center, their perceptions of each other are extracted and turned into physical manifestations. Jerry sees Beth as a towering, aggressive monster, while Beth sees Jerry as a spineless worm. These manifestations aren't just entertaining, they're brutally honest reflections of how they view each other. Jerry's perception of Beth reveals his insecurities about her strength and dominance, while Beth's view of Jerry highlights her frustration with his passivity. Watching this unfold is equal parts hilarious and heartbreaking, especially when their creations start wreaking havoc. I couldn't help but think about how often we project our fears and frustrations onto the people we love. It's not always as dramatic as a monstrous hologram, but those unspoken resentments can feel just as overwhelming. The escalation. As the manifestations grow out of control, so does the chaos at the counseling center. Beth and Jerry's inability to confront their issues head-on leads to a full-blown disaster, with their monsters destroying everything in sight. This part of the episode really drove home the idea that avoiding your problems only makes them worse. Beth and Jerry's refusal to communicate honestly is what allows their manifestations to spiral, much like how unresolved issues in a relationship can build up until they're impossible to ignore. Rick's subplot as Tiny Rick provides a humorous counterpoint to the chaos. While Beth and Jerry are dealing with their marriage, Rick is navigating his own emotional turmoil in a younger body. His cheerful teenage persona masks a deep-seated pain, culminating in his haunting cry for help through the song Let Me Out. The resolution. The episode's climax forces Beth and Jerry to confront their perceptions of each other. By acknowledging their flaws and strengths, they regain control over their manifestations and, by extension, their relationship. It's a moment of growth for both characters, even if it's wrapped in the absurdity of alien technology and holograms. This resolution felt surprisingly real to me. Relationships are messy, and growth doesn't come from ignoring the mess. It comes from wading through it together. Beth and Jerry aren't perfect, but they're willing to try, and sometimes that's enough. Big Trouble in Little Sanchez is a comedic yet poignant exploration of how perceptions shape relationships. Beth and Jerry's manifestations are extreme, but they're also a relatable metaphor for how unresolved conflicts can distort how we see each other. Their journey to reclaim control over these perceptions is a reminder that honesty and communication are key to overcoming even the most monstrous challenges. The parallel storyline with Tiny Rick adds depth to the episode, showing that emotional repression isn't limited to romantic relationships. Rick's struggle to ask for help mirrors Beth and Jerry's difficulty in addressing their issues, tying the two plots together in a meaningful way. Conclusion: The Rick and Morty Guide to Toxic Relationships. If there's one thing Rick and Morty teaches us, it's that relationships are complicated, messy, and more often than not, a little toxic. Through absurd sci-fi scenarios and razor-sharp humor, the show takes a magnifying glass to the cracks in our connections, exposing truths that are sometimes easier to laugh at than confront. But beneath the chaos, there's always a hint of humanity, a reminder that even in the most dysfunctional dynamics, there's something we can learn. As we've seen, Rick and Morty doesn't shy away from the darker sides of love and connection. From Rick and Unity's self-destructive romance and autoerotic assimilation, to Morty's disastrous obsession with Jessica in Rick Potion number 9, the show explores how easily our emotions can spiral out of control. Then there's Beth and Jerry's tumultuous marriage in Big Trouble in Little Sanchez, a painfully relatable look at how miscommunication and resentment can tear a relationship apart, until we choose to work through it. And finally, The Wedding Squanchers reminds us that betrayal and loyalty often exist on the same spectrum, leaving us to grapple with the fallout of tough choices.